one of the ones that had been on the news lately, and that is for several reasons, other than the fact that, well, it had been stopped to be debated about, but that was passed. But we'd like to specifically look at certain areas of it and see whether there are, there's credence to be added to that, but also looking and weighing in at BBI, Building Bridges Initiative, and what we expect from them. A quick reintroduction of the guests that we have, and I'll start by one who is joining us now. That's Honorable Titus Hamala, Member of Parliament from Lurabi. Thank you for joining us. We also earlier on had Honorable Kipruto Arap Kirwa, who's a former Minister for Agriculture, Nyangi Juma, who's a policy analyst, and Honorable Anthony Oluoch, who's Member of Parliament, Madare. Now, let's look at Punguza Mzigo. And one of the initiatives, or one of the things that they had suggested, is the question of reducing representation. Is Kenya overrepresented? Is one of the questions that we had asked. And they are proposing on having the constituencies or members of parliament reduced from 416 to 147. This is by abolishing the 290 constituencies, adopting 47 counties as a single constituency, amongst others. And we've had several leaders pronounce themselves or make mention of what they think. Let's start with Honorable Wetangula, who had something to say about that. Also, Ekuru Aukot, who was in defense of the bill that the Third Way Alliance is pushing for. Let's start off with some of what they had to say.
And the arguments are very cheap and simplistic. Why are they quarreling with the fact that we want to send more money to the people of Kenya in the counties? Why do they have a problem with us sending more money to make sure that the wards become the units of accelerated development? Why do they not want women to be as equal as men in election? Why don't they want us to address the national wage bill, which is a problem? Why don't they want us to strengthen parliament? These are just enemies of development. And let me tell you, their time is over. They need to vacate the space. Succession planning either comes by way of good leaders encouraging succession planning, or factors of natural attrition catching up with them. And I think in both cases are now evident.
When you talk about reducing the number of representation in parliament and assemblies as a process of reducing the burden of financial nature on Kenyans, it is a misguidement. It is actually taking a wrong trajectory on issues that affect this country. If you look at parliament, because everybody has speaking very excitedly against parliament from every direction, even those who don't know how parliament functions have been speaking very, very badly about parliament. I am not a paid defender of parliament, but I live in Kenya and I know how things work. Parliament, as currently constituted, enjoys a national budget annually of only 42 billion. Compare that with a national budget of 3.2 trillion. Even if you wiped out parliament and saved that 42 billion, what are you giving to Kenyans?
All right, and that's what they had to say. Let me start with you, Honorable Kirwa, on the question that we had asked everybody else, and in reflection to what those two leaders have had to say. Is Kenya overrepresented? Before we even go to the nitty-gritties of whether we reduce the members of parliament, how much are we saving really?
Well, I think the Honorable Wetangula has put it very clearly. It's only 42 billion. What I've always said, let us do an audit of this constitution and do a human resource audit of all the center of costs or the cost centers, such that we ask ourselves, does the governor have the requisite capacity to deliver, or does he have excess personnel that can be taken elsewhere for purposes of effective delivery? And if the answer to that question is in the affirmative, then we do an audit of how many ministers must a governor have for purposes of effective delivery. And once we get that, we'll be able to make a lot of savings instead of just looking. If you don't like your member of parliament, please, for heaven's sake, don't hate the constituency. These constituencies are not just a product of numbers, it's a product of community consensus. In some of the areas, you reduce even one constituency, you'll be creating chaos in this country. even where the community is homogeneous. Certain areas feel, for example, if you say Lurambi is going to be merged with the Kolomani, you are going to create a war that you will never see. Not because Mheshimiwa Hamala does not want it that way, but because the people on the ground, they know this is the way we have existed. Number two, we've reduced MCA substantially from the 3,000 councillors we used to have to about 1,450 that we have today. What we need to do is to see where is the wastage. The national government, the county government, why is there wastage, which is almost a third of the budget, or 100 or 1 trillion, instead of just worrying about 42 billion shillings. This has been over-sensationalized both by the media and also by civil society, who believe that MPs are a menace to them.
Absolutely. And let me come to you, Honorable Hamala, on your thoughts on the same, and whether you agree that this is something that is being overemphasized. According to Ekuru Court and Third Way Alliance, the saving would currently there's about 36.8 billion that is under the legislation that is spent by that. It would reduce it to 5 billion, which seems a significant amount. Although if you compared it to the national budget, the total national budget, it is quite small.
According to Ekuru and many other people, every time they think about saving money in this country, they think about parliament, because that's where they think, that's where there's wastage, so we need to reduce members of parliament. But number one, I want to begin by saying that constituencies represent people. You identify people by constituencies. And those who did this in the constitution, or those who laid the ground for this, especially when you talk about Lurambi, there is a people you are talking about. When you talk about Navaholo, there is a people you are talking about in terms of, because we have tribes in this country, and we cannot take that out of context. We cannot say we don't have Luyas. And in the Luya tribe, we have also sub-tribes. We cannot take that away. So actually, a tribe is a representation of the people, a sub-tribe is a representation of the people, and each constituency is unique in its own way. So just like former minister is saying, Mr. Mheshimiwa Kirwa, when we talk about Punguza Mzigo, then they just come to parliament. But let me tell you the truth. The big wastage is in the executive, I'm telling you. We want to look at these things holistically. We don't want to do piecemeal changes that just pleases a few activists. Let us think about when Mheshimiwa Kirwa was a cabinet minister, how much he was earning. He was a member of parliament by then. So actually, he got a little allowance for being a minister. But today, we have ministers who are appointed from outside parliament. That is the real mzigo we have. So to me, we have to look at these things holistically. You can't just say you will abolish constituencies, because you are simply removing the identity of a people.
Okay, let me come to you, Nyangi. According to Ekuru Court, he says that it's a simplistic way to look at it, and it's enemies of development that are against, this initiative.
This question whether the Kenyans are overrepresented, as has been proposed by Dr. Ekuru Court, this has many answers. It depends on who you ask. There are other Kenyans who actually feel that they are not even being represented. Even representation has not begun. So when you talk of over-representation, others are saying we have not even begun feeling the representation. And when he's talking about reducing the representation, targeting the national at the national level, the National Assembly, and the Senate, by reducing only the wages and the salaries paid to these people. He's saying you will save this amount of money. How much are these people? Because this is like people who are working in a farm. They are contributing. This amount you think you want to save, and you want to withdraw some workers from that farm, what will be the yield of that farm? You get out the workers, and you think all other factors held constant, you think you're going to have the same yield you had when you had 10 people working. You get 5 sacks, and you want them to be 5, and you expect that you have the same. So even what you think you might save, you may not save. So this is very simplistic, and it has not taken other factors. So And this is a question also we begin to ask. Why is it that the National Assembly or the Parliament is being targeted every time? What is it that they are not doing right? That is the question we begin to ask. That they're saying, no, that is where we need to
That's
go.
where we need to go.
Why?
All right, Honorable Lodge, your thoughts on this. And there are those who've argued that if National Assembly was indeed doing what they need to do and do it efficiently and effectively, the issue of how much they are paid and all that would not really be arising, because we'd see the net effect. In other words, there are those who feel that the reason why this would even come up is because there's a lot of inefficiency, there's a lot of wastage. Not long ago, we had an article that was talking about 90 legislators who had gone out of the country for benchmarking and, you know, other things that was totally unnecessary. So maybe it is because of the inefficiency of the National Assembly that this comes up.
Wastage is something that we must deal with at all levels, irrespective of whether it is in Parliament or the National Executive. On that score, I agree with anybody who feels that taxpayers' money is not being used properly. On the issue about wastage in regards to issues like TRIP, I do not hold brief for the people who went, but I took the trouble to try and look at the number that is being floated about 90 members of parliament. And my count ran to, I think, less than 23 or 24. The rest are from county assemblies, staffers from county assemblies, staffers from parliament, so that I think that whole debate needs to be cast into perspective. And when you do, it will bring you to one inescapable conclusion, which has always been, Parliament is always the punching bag. When you want to talk about reducing the tax burden, the place to go is Parliament. If you want to think about why Kenyans are suffering, they go to Parliament. So there is an executive conspiracy that has been shared, I think, with the mainstream media, that if you want to whip the emotions of the people about tax and how your money is being used improperly and how to carry it down, then go to Parliament. So that debate, it's never going to end. I have welcomed it myself. It's a debate that we must continuously have. But let's look at the question of representation and whether or not we will be doing Kenyans a favor by thinking about reducing the number of constituencies on account of the issue of reducing the tax burden. You go to the Constitution, it was informed around certain tenets. One of those was inclusivity. One of them was equity. One of them was devolving power from the center, devolving resources and services. So therefore, on that score alone, Ekuru Okot-led committee of experts, Dr. Ekuru Okot himself, gave us this constitution with this number of constituencies, with this number of what he's calling the mzigo. So I think he needs to start by telling us why he gave us this mzigo that he now wants to unburden. I think either he needs to give us an apology and say they were wrong, and they gave us this constitution that has burdened Kenyan. Now, if you look at the census that is coming, you will see that a number of constituencies that were called so-called protected constituencies are probably going to end up being affected. You must look at those in terms of what will happen to a constituency, for example, in Kuria. If you tell the constituency, the people in Kuria, they will tell you, like he is saying, that they are underrepresented. And if you put the question of population and the other indices that are being put in terms of how many constituencies we'll have, they will feel that they have been excluded from government. Now, I think the other debate then that we must now get into after this is how will the Ekuru Okot's bill pass through the 24 counties. And I think one of the things he has done is to purport to try and throw a carrot to the members of the county assembly.
The MCAs.
And the impression and the talk on the streets is that members of the county assembly have bought or seem to be looking at the idea that if you take away constituencies, whatever is being controlled by constituencies, including CDF,
would end up with them.
But then I want to invite them to look at clause 7, part 8 of that bill. A very hidden clause in the Punguza Mzigo proposed bill. And here it says that unlike the constituencies which have been reduced to 140 something. This is very hidden. Clause 8 says, if necessary, the commission shall alter the number, names, and boundaries. So it means that the county assembly themselves are not safe. In fact, it is very possible that what we now call the sub-counties, which are the constituencies, will actually end up being the wards. So the person who is your MCA right now will not be running for that ward where they are. In my constituency, I have 6 of them. They will actually be competing for one seat. That ward, it will be called Mathare constituency. So it is important that we unpack and look at this bill for what it really is. And then my last point is simply this. It looks like a tired story that has been told, but it is true. If Punguza Mzigo is really going to Punguza Mzigo, yes, reduce the number of constituencies if you must, if people will support it, cut down the salaries, in fact, even make it 0 for members of parliament, and then come to the equation of what it amounts to, it's just 2%. Even if you say members of parliament work for free, it is 2%. The elephant in the house is the 83 or 85% that is controlled by the executive. 50-something% of that from the executive in terms of the salary, ministerial, whatever, the allowances, and all the things that they go through, and the consolidated or contingency funds, which has about 30-something%. In total, 83 to 85%. What is this bill telling us about how they are going to deal with that?
All right, and let me come to you, Honorable Hamala. And one of the proposals in this bill, away now from overrepresentation, because I think you're all in agreement that that maybe is not an issue that we have in Kenya right now, although you agree that there's wastage. There's also the proposal of strengthening devolution. And according to some, apparently there seems to be a deliberate effort between the National Assembly and Executive to cripple devolution by way of starving them with money. But according to this bill proposed, they want to move the share from 15% to 35% to what now reaches the counties, which would look as an attractive proposal, specifically in terms of now strengthening devolution.
In terms of Punguza Mzigo and talking about counties, actually that is where there's really so much wastage is in the counties. Because, you know, there are so many places you go to, and me, I'm very thankful for my governor, Honorable Paranya, for the great work he has done in Kakamega. But there are counties where you go, and all they have is a toilet, nothing else. There are counties where you go, and where they have spent money is just on recurrent budget. In fact, we have places whereby there's just no road, nothing to show. So in terms of increasing allocation to county governments, how do you increase when you have not counter-checked the wastage that is there?
Although that would speak to poor leadership in those counties, because like now a county like you're saying where Oparanya is in charge of, if they were given more allocation, if he's doing a good job, then really there should be incentives for him to continue.
But will we have Oparanya every day?
No, we'll not. But what that means is that we need good leaders. The issue is not the amount of money that is given. If we have bad leaders, whether it is 15% or even 5%.
Actually, you've seen how many governors have been arrested, how many MPs have been arrested in terms of corruption as compared to the governors. Actually, there are so many governors out there who are not even supposed to be in office as we are talking right now. So
my point is that we cannot excuse and say that the money that should go to the counties should be reduced or curtailed simply because some are misusing.
I agree with that. And I agree, I am a proponent of the constituency, because this money that comes to the constituency is well checked. Look at the structures of CDF and how far the member of parliament you are on these monies and how far your hands are from these monies. To me, I think increasing money to the counties without restructuring and checking the flows that are existing as of now, it will still be escalating the wastage.
Okay, and what are some of those flows, would you say, that are causing the wastage at the county level?
Number one, we have to think about the ward representative. You know, the wards, money flowing into the wards, because look at the procurement process. Look at how everything, the services are procured, and how tendering is done, and in between, those officers have middlemen right in there. There is a lot of cash that gets lost just within that processes. So to me, I'm thinking, look, if we are going to increase money to the counties, something has to be done. Because we can't just say that it depends on good leaders. Because even if a leader is not having good integrity, because we don't know who will be elected, we have no power.
There have to be structures
yes,
that ensure
there
that
should be structures that can safeguard and keep the hands of a dead man out of that.
All right, Nyangi, your thoughts on that? And the excuse, of course, has been that there's misappropriation of funds, and all we've done is devolve corruption.
To me, what should be the issue is that funds should follow functions. But we have situations where the counties have been assigned functions, a lot of functions, but you find that funds for some of those functions are still at the national level. Look, an example of health. Health, a huge function of health is with the hands of the county governments. But if you look at the total budgetary allocation that goes to health, and then you see what is going to the counties, you find that the counties, for sure, they have little resources to fund the functions that they have. And as long as they have these functions, then funds should follow functions. When the functions go, then they should be accompanied by the funds. And nevertheless, also the wastage at the counties, it should be seen that beyond money landing at the counties, does this money move in all other areas of the county? Because the essence of devolution is decentralization, meaning moving the resources from the center to the periphery, so that the people at the boundary, the people at the far end of the nation, all of them can benefit that. But we have situations where funds, yes, move from the national. When it reaches at the county, that is the end. Going beyond the county, there is invention of the capture still at the state capture at the county, where you find that the same exclusion that was meant to be addressed, they still start the same exclusion at the county level. You find, for example, when I was looking at the submissions, I quickly found 2 submissions that were done to the BBI on the county government of Migori. And the people, for example, the people of Kuria are saying, for us, devolution is the worst thing that happened to us. The services that we had before
are no longer there.
We had a municipality that was closer to us, that was collecting garbage in our urban area, we're getting water, we're getting street markets were there. But with the devolution, everything, the grader we had, the bulldozers we had that were grading our roads,
All right.
went to the county.
Let me come to you, Honorable Kirwa. And there's, of course, that notion and narrative that we've had time and again, that because counties have mismanaged what they have so far, it doesn't make sense for us to increase the allocation that goes to them.
Well, nothing can be further from the truth. What we need to do is to strengthen the capacity of oversight, the oversight capacity and the management of the counties for purposes of ensuring that we have better resource management and also we are able to oversight. The other issue is also to stop delays in terms of disbursement of resources. Some of the counties have run into risks of even borrowing from the market to bridge some of the gaps. Now the interest accrued, who is going to pay for that? It is going to remain a problem for many years to come. And those counties are likely to run the risk of ensuring that they are running a budget that has a deficit against the norm. Number 3 is also the issue of procurement. There are some of the procurement processes that are done at the county level and others are done at the national level without effective consultation with the county. It creates a problem where some of the facilities are procured and yet they do not have effective usage on the ground. Finally, is the need for us to rationalize the human resource component of every county and even the national government. Where the money is lost is that we have too many workers who are doing nothing because they have not been effectively trained and they have not been rationalized, so that we ask ourselves, what is effective delivery of services in a certain constituency that can be enhanced by the county without necessarily making it too costly.
All right, Honorable Luoch, you're weighing in on this in terms of the money allocation to the county level. There is, of course, the narrative that I mentioned earlier where the Executive and National Assembly are being blamed to somehow muzzle the county government by way of, freezing funds.
I think on the issue of revenue allocation, the provision, I think, is an increase from 15% to 35%. And on that score, I want to agree with them that the county allocation of 15%, which is minimum, should be taken to 35%. But remember that even as we talk about 15% minimum, at the current level, we are actually at 30-something% already. But it makes sense, of course, that we try and take as much as possible of the monies from the center, which was the entire concept of devolution. I also do agree that there is a part that is played by the national government and particularly the treasury of how they hold and release funds to the counties. The manner in which you release these funds, I think, affects the development and the manner in which it is carried out at the county level. But I think myself, where the focus ought to be, beyond the increase for 15 to 35%, is to ask ourselves, not the question as to whether they will use it properly, because we have oversight organs that will do that. We have the controller of budgets that continuously checks and audits the county budgets and the manner in which it is used before they release. We have the Auditor General, and of course we have the oversight role of the Senate. I am not overly worried myself about that. If there is a failure, that failure should be placed at these institutions and probably at EACC and the DCI in terms of whether or not we can get prosecutions. I think it makes sense that we put more money to it. My concern, and which I haven't seen on this bill, is that counties spend more than 70% of the money that we give them on development expenditure. I think the principle underlying sending monies was not really to pay or to employ persons at the county. I think that the real reason for devolution was, one, to take services closer, but more importantly, to ensure that development occurs. So that I think one of the proposals that should come out, and which I hope the BBI will bring out, is that no less than 70% of the monies that we take to counties, whether it goes to 35%, whether it's 45%, whatever the benchmark that will be there, only 30% should go to recurrent expenditure.
All right. For now, I want us to take a very short commercial break and pay some bills. But do stay with us. When we come back, we'll also continue with this conversation, but more or less look at now the BBI and what we should expect from them, because it looks like from some pundits who say it is not a matter of if we're going to have a referendum. It is a question of when. We'll weigh in on that when we come back. We take a short break. We'll be right back.